that time again for Mr. Nailsin's Wednesday Comics, and right off the bat, let's just start with my favorite currently, is World's Finest. Yeah. So this is the story they set up where you lead into, Kingdom Come, and so there's all the characters from it, and, because that's where we left off with, what's his name? Boy Thunder, who, oh no, spoiler if you didn't know, he grows up to become Magog. And so anyway, it starts off where you get a bunch of snippets of multiverse stuff, and there's the Flash, the Barry Allen version, running through and just giving himself a tour of the multiverse. And then, he sees the Kingdom Come world. Because he almost gets run over by his alternate self from the Kingdom Come era. I didn't realize he was barefoot in this, but does that mean... So anyway, then there's a battle already in progress with some villains, and the World's Finest Team with Robin take that on. But the Flash shows up, helps them out, and lets them know, hey, look, I found your sidekick, Boy Thunder. And Superman's like, oh, great. That's cool. And you'll have to read the rest to see what happens. But they travel to the Kingdom Come world, and it's a revisiting of that iteration of a possible future for your superheroes. And there's some elements in here giving a nod to the possibility that this is somewhere their actual future could end up in this aspect. But anyway, so, it's a good run, but it's just the setup for this story, so we'll see how it plays out. But, once again, it doesn't disappoint, and that's what's great about World's Finest. Meanwhile, the spin-off title that isn't so great of Teen Titans, and this one's a pretty good example of the overall problem with the story. And the bulk of it is this business of Wally invites Speedy and Aqualad over to his home, and he says, hey, got to be careful. My parents don't know that I'm Kid Flash and all this stuff. And they just have some little shenanigans about Garth Aqualad being, awkward and doesn't quite understand the surface world and all this sort of thing. And also, boy's depressed because his relationship with Donna may not be working out and all that type of thing. And then the real problem is, Speedy Arrow is just putting up a front because he really feels like Green Arrow, his stand-in dad, doesn't spend enough time with him. No. And then Wally's hot mom shows up. So, meanwhile, we get a little interlude. Dick Grayson talking to Golden Eagle, And then, Donna's having the time of her life without her boyfriend. So, boy, what does that say? And she went to, a derby or something, and we find out she doesn't really know how to drive, but she did anyway, but she's still playing with the steering wheel. I don't know. The art is great, and all that, but, story-wise, just not so much. Then finally, at the damn near the end, you get some action here where Bumblebee gets attacked by this man, or maybe he's younger than that, I guess, since it's Teen Titans. The Ant, I guess, is his deal. And attacks Bumblebee, and Bumblebee is dating this guy who received the shield of the Guardian as a gift. So I guess this is another retcon of the new Guardian for the purposes of this story, which, takes place in the past and all that. So, but this is his first introduction into it. And he's never been in a superhero battle or anything before. But the shield has this button, you touch it, and then, the whole costume appears and everything. And Bumblebee, well, she's into this guy, so she wants him to join her in the superhero world. But again, never done it before. He's thrown into it, into this battle with this villain. And then you can see where the villain attacks him, and he uses the shield, but he's like terrified. So he's like, "Ah!" But look at his face. You know, you forgot something there. I mean, he's in, a pretty good Captain America pose, and everything's great and all that. But if he's terrified and doesn't quite know what he's doing, he wouldn't be in such a confident pose. So kind of screwed that up. But ultimately, it was boring. It was teen soap opera stuff, and then a few seconds of action, which I guess since it ended on this sort of cliffhanger with it, that the next issue will be full-blown battle with this character who's just a pawn for another plot and all that. But still, man, that's the problem. World's Finest weaves these stories so much better, and that's just lacking for Teen Titans. Meanwhile, these kind of sort of spin-off titles out of Justice Society, which picks up the threads laid down by Justice Society and Stargirl. There's The Flash, Jay Garrick's version, and then there's Alan Scott, Green Lantern, and then Sandman. And I have no interest in the Alan Scott version because the character's just been retconned for the purposes of virtue signaling about homosexuals, because for whatever reason his gay son wasn't good enough. And then retconning it even further to where he was blackmailed into joining the JSA to begin with by J. Edgar Hoover and all that. No interest in that. Here we have The Sandman, and the art done by an artist named Riley Rossmo, who I believe was the artist on the Tim Drake series, which I don't know if that was supposed to be a miniseries or it got canceled or whatever, but the whole thing looked terrible. I saw a lot of reviews on it, and Tim Drake's another character that's just been completely retconned for the purposes of homosexuality. and he's just too old of a character to do something like that with. And it doesn't make any sense within even recent narratives for him. And so there's just no interest in it because, you don't care. So why should anyone else? But a lot of people attack the art as looking too kooky for it. And I got to admit, from the pages I saw, it didn't look all that great. But for here in Sandman, I don't know, it might actually kind of fit. There's all kinds of different styles of art and whatnot. And but once they're fully realized, in some cases they work, even though some of this stuff would probably work better in, more reality-based stories or comedies or something like that. And then sometimes they do work for these sort of dark stories, sometimes horror stories, and this sort of noir approach of the pulp era, which the Wesley Dodds Sandman fits right in. It's not in some scenes it's not all that complete. I think there's a little it's like it's left unfinished, and that hurts it. But overall, I don't mind it at all, and actually I like this comic. It just wasn't that bad. It's just basic Sandman. He's dealing out his justice. And then there's his chemical concoctions that he comes up with, which I'm kind of wondering if they would link his research into that of, Dr. Crane, who becomes the Scarecrow. I really wish they would just go full blown back to Earth 2 with these characters, to where they did have a Superman and Batman, and they could link that up. But anyway, I don't guess they'll ever do it. So you get a little montage scene here where he doesn't have superpowers per se, but he does have prophetic dreams, where he's foreseeing the world he's dealing with mobsters and all this, and here's some creepy serial killer, And then he's having visions of the Justice Society that I guess at this point he hasn't met yet. And then even further in the future where you see the modern day Justice Society and all that. And so that's the deal, where it's going into some of those endeavors. And you gives you an overview of his life and his girlfriend and all that stuff. And then somebody's plotting against him and ends up burning his house down and stuff like that. So adventure is afoot and danger for the Sandman. But overall, I didn't really pick any examples of where I thought it went bad. This is actually a pretty good page, even with the sort of, more cartoony approach. But you can see kind of like, it's almost like, I don't know, the inking was not quite on par. If it was more, tighter and more stylized there, it might look a lot better. And then things like this, where he's got one big leg and then a little bloop leg, stuff like that. But all in all, I don't mind it as much. There was a lot of saw a lot of reviews on the Robin thing and saying, "Oh God, this is terrible," but seems to work much better here for Sandman. So far so good. I'm liking this one. So the other spinoff is Jay Garrick's The Flash. And, of course, after Stargirl, the daughter he didn't remember, who didn't really exist until we retconned her existence for the purpose of this version of the Justice Society. And we get a little more backstory on that. All very brief and whatnot, but here they are in the Flash's younger days where he had his daughter, the Boom. And this is a scenario where her mother, his wife, got kidnapped and they're coming to rescue her. And they do. Then we jump ahead where, but that story revealed that was their last adventure together when she disappeared. And then, of course, here she's back, but her parents are really old and everything's changed and she's still a young girl. And then they show her the Flash family, which gives you an idea of what the problem is. There's just too many Flashes. Remember when it was, just him and that was it. And then Wally was a kid and he was Kid Flash, and now you gotta have two kids, were actually maybe three Kid Flash. Well, then again, oh boy, it just goes on and on. So it's interesting for a nod here and there, but it's same thing with Superman. It crowded, where the main character is just sort of a guest star in their own book and that type of thing. But anyway, for the purposes of this story, it's okay. I think it got off to an interesting start. There's a villain, of course, they need to look out for. And it's interesting because he's forgotten as well, I guess, because of the connection he had with the Boom, and he witnessed her disappearing, and it seemed like he didn't forget, that she had existed and stuff, whereas her own parents did. So that's a bit intriguing. The art's fine, and some of it, I don't know, there's some shades of image art and stuff. But anyway, I think I like Sandman better than this one, but this one wasn't bad. And, we'll see. Meanwhile, over at Superman, well, he wants to show off his booty, I guess. It's an oversized issue, so there's several artists, and this is more of the art they had in the previous issue, which I didn't think it was all that bad. I thought, it was kind of clunky, but it tended to work. Not really liking this image all that great, but what are you going to do? But basically, it's Perry reminiscing about how the first time he saw Superman, and then he's deciding to run for mayor of Metropolis, and Metropolis, not Metropolis, and all that. So, meanwhile, the new villain that was introduced last issue, Chains, shows up and battles. Look, he's fighting with Superman. Well, he's fighting with the Super Family, so Superman shows up, but, once again, he's something of a guest star in his own book. Not entirely this issue, but, I think it's a problem. So it's just a few more things here, that there's a certain, a type of telekinesis that's the heart of Chain's power. And then they realize that Connor Kent, Superboy, has telekinesis powers. And the Chain says, oh, you're like me. And since they're both the results of Lex Luthor's experimentation, then there's the link as to why and that sort of thing. Ultimately, James meets the villains that are really behind it all, and well, there you go. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor's talking about his past, and they include this image here, which was sort of the post or in the midst of the New 52 era. So they're acknowledging that it happened, which is odd because this is the same idea that Luthor became a superhero, joined Justice League and all that. And now, we're going to follow that again. We've retconned it where he was a superhero in his past, and that's where he ran afoul of these other scientists or mad scientists or whatever. That's the problem I'm having with the story overall. If this change thing becomes an interesting story unto itself, fine. But, but this time he really means it. Lex Luthor's turned on a new leaf. And then we meet his mother and his daughter. She's got this sort of Brainiac impressions on her head. So wait a minute, did he have a daughter with Brainiac? Ew. So the art, various art, this art is not bad, it's pretty good. And then you get to a reveal that Brainiac is also behind it all. Of some sort, and it's threatening his his looming threat, but the art on the Brainiac story just isn't any good at all. It's pretty bad. Pretty foolish way to end it on that, but that's where it ends, more or less. There's a big destructive fight, but I'll save that if you should so desire to check it out. Can't say it was an awful issue, but it's something that's in between things, and we'll see. But I don't know. Just nothing about what they're doing with Luthor interests me because I've seen it done before. And now there's a daughter and his mother's alive and all this sort of thing, and looks like they're both going to team up and girl boss him. And all that. So I don't know, but we'll see what's going on with Mr. Chains, I guess. Meanwhile, over at Marvel, the only thing I cared to check out was the Hulk, which was not bad. It was pretty good, and the Man-Thing has to convince Hulk to help. And what convinces him? Well, the girl companion he has now was in danger, so of course he rises to the occasion to be the hero, and more setting down the overall arc of the monsters are coming out of the woodwork to deal with him. Here was the spirit of an old dead witch became this monster. That's the idea. And they just sort of stumble into it. The original artist was a much better fit for this horror element idea for the Hulk. But it's in some ways the art here from Travel Foreman does okay, and in other scenes not so much. So it's a kind of a hit and miss thing. Although there was a scene where you see the Hulk when he gets sad, feeling sorry for the girl, and he turns back into Bruce Banner here, and it's pretty gruesome transformation. Usually, most of the time, you see the Hulk the Bruce Banner turn into the Hulk, but man, It was pretty bad. So I'm not familiar with what became of Betty, but I guess she's become a monster herself now. And so there's an offer for Bruce Banner to be separated from the Hulk, and the eldest or what have you of the monsters is making this offer, and I guess that'll be the test of Bruce Banner here, of what he may or may not do. There was a backup story featuring a Power Man. Now, this is a new Power Man. Of course, Luke Cage was the original Power Man, and I think he should continue that name. But the title is Power Man No More, so perhaps he's decided to drop the title. The idea that he's having such a struggle with having some other superhero's name. It's a bit much. But ultimately, it's his father who's passed away and all this stuff. So he comes up in the midst. I guess this was like from earlier on, hearing about all these monster attacks, and to deal with it, it ends up confronting the Hulk. But then they just sort of talk it over. It's not that great of a story, but it's all right, I guess. Really, maybe this artist should have been the replacement. Althea Martinez, or maybe so. Yeah, I know it's a Vida Ayala story, but it's real quick, so didn't have enough time to mess it up, I guess. So anyway, I guess Power Man or Power Man 2 won't be called Power Man anymore. I don't know. He leaves his goggles behind after he visits his father's grave. So I guess that's what it's people bought it to read Hulk, not Power Man, so I don't know. But anyway, there you go. So finally, some independent works, and this is, of course, Eric July's character Isam. And I'm not overly impressed with these. This is the second volume. There's some more superheroic action in it and that sort of thing, and a little more into this supernatural elements and monsters that he's facing. But overall, it's kind of bland. I like Eric July. I like his positions on a lot of things, and his critiques of the comic industry are pretty much spot on. And I think that goes a long way, obviously, for the popularity. I mean, contributes a great deal to the success he's had. I don't agree with people who just outright hate the man for whatever reason, and I suspect it's because of the success he's had. He starts making $1 million per campaign. All of a sudden, there's all these people taking interest and calling him a scam artist of some sort. Well, he's not. But in the long run, ultimately, these books will have to stand on their own rather than the appreciation people have for the viewpoints and whatnot of what happened to the comic book industry due to primarily the destruction of the woke era and all of that. But, you know, I'll back the next one and see how it ends up. But what he's building with his Rippaverse could grow into something really good, and that's when, you know, he's hiring Chuck Dixon and the like, who could come up and script those ideas in the more grounded and tightened up, if you will, of writing templates for superhero adventure stories and that sort of thing. So wouldn't rule it out by any means, but not blown away by Isam as much as I thought I might have been. But anyway, we'll see. He could pick up for the maybe the third arc is the payoff, as it should. But a lot of this is also like it maybe it should have all been just one big fat book. You know? and put all together, it works much better. And maybe that's the case. And that's a more fair judgment of it overall. But so anyway, we'll see how it goes. And with the talent that he's attracting, I think it can only get better. So we'll see how that goes. As for the lawsuit and all that stuff, I don't really see the case against him there. And again, I think a lot of this is because he made $1 million. Oh, and now there's a lot of jealousy and whatnot involved in this sort of thing. And but it's a shame that stuff like that would overshadow the product, you know. So, well, of course, I'm going to keep my eye on it and see where it goes. But in my complete objective, honest opinion, I wasn't overwhelmed by, so far, the efforts on this story. So finally, cuffs arrived in the mail from Splato Comics, as Richard C. Myers' venue, for the sort of solo stories of his Jawbreakers characters. The first one was Knife Hand, and then here we have cuffs with the same artist, and it's this sort of, you know, in some cases minimalist, but in others just splattery painting of a look, but it works for it. And it is very simple. You get, of course, the origin of, well, you get the title. You get the origin of Cuffs, and it's this, he takes on this villain who can get into his mind and cause him to relive events that happened to him and that sort of thing. And this was some preview art without the dialogue and all that, so I thought I'd use that to talk about it. But as you can see, it's fine. It's sort of the scattered look and whatnot. But it's a very simple story. And he's got to deal with these guys, and then it ends on the seemingly ominous tone. I guess, there'll be a follow-up of how he encounters Knife Hand, I suspect, and who was watching over him in this particular adventure. And so basically he gets caught up with the villains, and he turns the table on them and wins, and it's fine. It's a fine story. And between the two, between this one and Isom, this one was the better one. And maybe, probably, no doubt, helped in the fact that it was a rather quick read, and it got to the point and was done, and it's not dragged down by anything. So that probably goes a long way into making it stand out better. So anyway, there we go. Of course, World's Finest continues its streak as just being the best superhero title available. Marvel delivered almost nothing except the Hulk. And then a couple of indies that are interesting to take into consideration. So there you go. I'll read some more comics, and probably we'll talk about them right here on Mr. Nailsin's Wednesday Comics.